second lesson of week 10. In the previous lesson, we had exercises in class and some time to do assignment. Assignment deadline is moved slightly till Monday, plus 3 days as usual to submit it with penalty. But please don't postpone it. Do it as soon as you can. Assignment was posted way before, so keep organized so you finish it comfortably within the time. So let's, today is actual lesson, not like previous lesson, where we had exercises in class, and just if you choose to do an assignment in class, it was fine with me. So I was there to answer your questions. Today we'll have like regular lesson, and it is fit into the framework of the course. So what did we do so far? In the beginning of this course, we developed server-side applications that were using databases and templates to display data on the page. Closer to the end of the first half, and it was week 7, we had one lesson on Wednesday, and you didn't have it because Monday lesson in your case was lost. But I posted that lesson recorded in another section. It was optional, and I encouraged you to watch it if you want to. What was the lesson about? In that lesson, I provided one application that is serving JSON for backend. Backend was sending data in terms of JSON format, and front end written with HTML and JavaScript was displaying the data. There is no update of the data. There is no delete or any kind of insert of the data. It was just displaying existing data on the server. Front end was implemented using JavaScript, plain JavaScript, and jQuery as well. I also, when I was explaining this program, I said that it works fine and it is simple, but it works fine and simple only because application is simple. If we want to implement something more complicated that involves changing of data, multiple pages, playing the same way with the JavaScript and jQuery code will not really work, because we will have to write a lot of code ourselves, and we will have to re-implement things that already exist. Unlike a general rule of programming, we don't reinvent things if it already exists, unless we really have to. Unless we really have to, because if existing features of framework does not fit our purpose, and it may happen if we write large projects. Why we don't redo it? First of all, because it takes a lot of time to do it. Second, because if there is an established solution, it's probably already debugged. And debugging takes a lot of time, and if it is already debugged, software that is using established solution is more reliable, because we want to write reliable software. So this is this is why we typically use existing frameworks, unless we really have no choice, and write something on our own. In the second half of the course, I picked Angular for front end because it fits really well into the structure of the course, and it is one of the most popular front end solutions. In the beginning of the second half, we had introduction to Angular, and we had several examples. I posted 2 exercises in hopes that you will do it eventually. And last assignment 4, will involve Angular. But idea in the course, close to end, is to have an application that has front end written in JavaScript and back end written in Spring Boot. Using Spring Boot, it means Java. Spring Boot can also use Kotlin, and can use Kotlin, for example. And using Kotlin is not an option in this course for tactical reason, strategic actually reason, because in your program you don't have Java in any other course. So it should be at least one course with Java. So it is the reason why Kotlin is not used for backend in this course. Maybe later it will be both, but for now it is just Java backend and frontend. It is either HTML plus JavaScript or HTML plus Angular. No, it's not plus, it is together. Angular is together with HTML. So let's, so the goal is to have something with front end written with Angular and back end written with Spring Boot. We already had some application in Angular, written in Angular, that loads JSON. It loads JSON from server side, and since JSON is provided by server side, this application doesn't really care where it's coming from. It sends requests to certain address, and it receives JSON. So this is why API is exactly the same, because it doesn't know what happens on the server side. It doesn't need to know. It sends requests to certain address and receives JSON. The same magic would happen if JSON is provided by application running on the server side. Your Angular code will send request and receive JSON from certain address. But that is exactly equivalent if we just receive JSON. What if we need to delete data? What if we need to update data, insert data? We didn't cover it so far. And we didn't cover it so far because we just started using Angular. And second, we just started to deal with web services written in Kotlin and providing JSON. So our plan for today. I posted two examples. One, it is example discussed in week 7. And it was optional lesson, recorded, and I hope that you'll watch. I will not discuss things that are not relevant to this lesson. It means I can save tons of time. What I will not discuss? I will not discuss JavaScript and jQuery code, because for the rest of this course, we will use Angular for front end. So I'm not discussing JavaScript and jQuery, JavaScript using jQuery in this example, because I'm not going to use it later. How it works, you're absolutely welcome to watch that lesson in week 7. It is recorded and posted, so you know how it works. It is really relatively simple, so it could be described from scratch, even if when I explain how jQuery works. And I did explain it, how jQuery works during that lesson. So that part is not explained. I will explain how I created this project, and I will explain how actually it works. After this, we will turn off security. I will explain why. And we will play with adding data, removing data, updating data. Because that example, student data service, has a security layer on top that prevents changing data. So it is actually denying all the requests that are not GET requests. And so we cannot send delete request or put request to change data or post request to add data. So that we will just remove it for simplicity. Later in this course, we will learn how to do logins and passwords into web services. And this will be covered how to do logins and passwords. In today's lesson, we will just practice with dealing with web service without extra step and complexity, dealing with login. So logins into web services will be explained later in this course. For simplicity, I will just turn off security in this project, and to avoid dealing with login and password. So far, we had applications with very little database path. We had student data examples that contained 3 tables. One table was specifically for the data. It was student data table. And two data tables were related to logins and roles. And logins and roles were mapped together, connected together with many-to-many mapping. And you saw how it was implemented to tables with many-to-many mapping. We didn't have examples with multiple tables related by different mappings so far. And we need to, in real case scenario, we will have it, right? will have more than one table, and more than 3 tables are related to each other with various mapping, one-to-one, many-to-many, many-to-one, one-to-many. And we need to fill this gap. And for this reason, I have example that I will explain today, pet sitters example, that contains multiple tables with different relations. One-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many. I will explain this, and this example is also, it is imitation of back-end. Pet sitters, it's not my example. I just copy-pasted code and I changed the code. It's coming from textbook written by Juliana, one second. Juliana Kosmina. She's a real guru in writing books about Spring Framework. She's publishing books about Spring Framework regularly. It comes from her book, and this book called it is a certification guide for Spring Framework. And it is not the latest edition. It is one step before. Because it is simple code. This is why I picked that one. And it is still reasonable code. It is not out of date. It's using Spring 5 and Spring Boot 2. It is just previous edition, and there is no reason why it's out of date. It's not out of date. Our current edition of this book, Certification Guide for Spring Certification, is using an example about police database, about policemen, crime cases, evidence, and it is quite large example. And in the previous edition, it was an example about pet sitters. Pet sitters, it is imitation of real web application where users can register as a pet owner or potential pet sitter or both. So they can find each other for pet sitting purpose. Pet owners can leave pet sitting request on the site, and pet sitters may look up if there is a place next door or close by or traveling place to go. And they can leave response, so this way to pet sitting request. This way they can talk to each other, and pet sitting happens. It also maintains data about pets associated with pet owners. And also they can rate each other. Pet sitters can rate pet owners, like good experience, bad experience, and vice versa. Pet owners can rate pet sitters, like good experience, bad experience with this person at a particular place. So particular time. So rating is related to responses and requests. So this is how it works. Pet sitters example is built in that book chapter by chapter, but it's not complete example. It's not really a working application. It is every chapter provides a little bit example that may be in real life application. So she provides reasonable examples, but it's not an entire app. It is just every chapter has a little bit code, but it's never complete. By the end of the book, it's not complete. So I picked the code for the chapter where she is explaining web services before security, so for simplicity. So pet sitters, it is her code copy-pasted into a project created from scratch. So I created project from scratch, and I copy-pasted her code into it and changed this code slightly. I will explain what it is, and primary reason for it is to show how to deal with tables and different mappings between tables. In this course, we are using Java Persistence API, and in Java Persistence API, we use object-oriented access to tables, right? Because every row or table is associated with a class, and object is associated with a row in the table, right? So if we have a student's table, every row is a separate object, like a student form object, right? student form object associated with row, student data form. So this is how we deal with it. And pet sitters contains multiple tables with multiple relations. Before we reach there, it will be the second half of the lesson. In the first half of the lesson, please clone examples to student data service. I will clone it now because I don't have it on this laptop. So I'm going to play student data service. I click code and I click copy. Next, I will open IntelliJ IDEA. And it opens previous project, so I need to close that one. It opens what else was clear. So I close this project. And it brings me to welcome screen. And I click get from version control, get from VCS. And I do control V. And I need to be careful where it goes, because by default it goes to the same folder. And I want to put it into Spring folder, not Angular. When you clone project, make sure that you are creating folder for it. So you don't mix it with this folder stuff, like files of the project do not mix with documents folder stuff or something like that. So this is what I did. I clone student data service and click clone. Now it is making a copy of it. It's building, right? So by default, it will open master branch. There is also a branch that doesn't have any security configuration in it. I will show what it's about. Since lesson in week 7 was optional, I will quickly remind what this application is about without explaining JavaScript code. In lessons from week 7 that you missed due to holiday, I explain it JavaScript code. It's video recorded. If you want to watch it, you're welcome. But before I continue with the lesson, I need to show how it works and what it does. So I will run this application. I click Run button. So we will see what it is doing. So it started. So I go to localhost 8080, localhost 8080, and it opens me table. As you see, this looks like a small part of Student Data 2 application. In Student Data 2 application, we also had login, password, right? We also had the option to edit, delete data. In this case, it is just view details. So if I click for Lisa Simpson info, it shows me a page with more details about Lisa Simpson. So when we play with functionality of this program, we may think that it is just a small portion of Student Data 2, nothing else. And it looks like because I pick templates from Student Data 2 and I change it to templates. So it makes this impression because I use the same HTML, essentially. But behavior of this program is completely different. Internal structure and how it does it. So let's see what we have. First of all, if we open source and main resources, we will see that we don't have even templates folder in it, right? There is no templates folder. It's not using templates. This is why. It's not using templates. It's not using even library templates. It's not even included in library. In resources, we see index.html as static, inside of static. And details.html, also in static. If we open index.html, we will see that it contains index.js. So index.html contains code index.js, and it is in JavaScript folder. If we open that index.js, we will see that it is getting JSON from this address. And after this, it is processing it by running a loop, for each loop, to print a table on the screen. So unlike template version, where data is inserted on the server side, in this version, JavaScript included inside of index.html is pulling data from the server in JSON format. And when it is received, it is running loops through JSON in order to build the table. So approach is very similar to Flower example that we already had. It is getting JSON from the server side and running loop in order to print it as a table. So there is nothing new here if you compare it to Angular. Obviously, it's a lot shorter because of a little overhead. If we use Angular application, we have a lot of features for future. So this is why simple application in Angular is more complicated than simple application in just plain JavaScript. Because a lot of overhead, a lot of built-in features that are useful for larger apps. So what we have here? We have an index page, this one. And when we click on item info, it shows details page. So details page is this one, details.html. Has own script, details.js. How does it work? We have two completely different JavaScripts, but we need to pass data between. Unlike in Angular, it is two separate programs. So essentially, you need to pass data between two separate programs. In Angular example, like Flower example and example with multiplication quiz, passing data between pages is not an issue because they are not pages. They're imitation of pages. So because we are running the same JavaScript, so essentially it is just variables in memory. So we don't have an need to pass data between different programs because it's one program. It's a set of variables in memory, set of the code. In this case, we have two different programs per page. This is why it's more complicated. And in order to solve this issue, I do this trick, Control-Shift-I, stands for inspection. And when I do Control-Shift-I, it's developer tools, I can open tab, call it application. In the application tab, I click localhost 8080, and you see. When I click, for example, Lisa Simpson, it is info Lisa Simpson, you see that this ID is changing to 3. This one, you see, ID is changing to 3. I'm going back to list of students. When I click Alex Titervak, ID is changing to 1. So what did I do? When I click it on list of item here, JavaScript is inserting data into local storage for second JavaScript to pick it. So on click, like Bart Simpson, it will insert 2 here. And this is the address for the second page to pick the data. This is how second page knows what data to show. We put address on click into local storage, and second page is using key, because key doesn't change, value change. Key, student data link key, to retrieve value from local storage. So that was a trick to pass data between two pages. Obviously, if we have a lot of pages and a lot of things to handle, this would be too much. So in Angular, it would be more graceful. Why did I show this? To avoid the magic feelings, how it works. And we saw that data is coming for specific address. So this is not a file, it is real service. And this is why every student data has own address. It is not just table of all students, it's also every student form has own address. In the previous lessons, we installed program called Postman. So let's open Postman and see how it works. In student data service, I created get students request. How did I do it? If you click student data service, and if you don't have it, you can create new collection. So this what you have, it's collections. A collection, and in new collection, you can rename it to something like students, for example. Students. So this is new collection, students. And I add new request, add request, and I call it, for example, get all students. Get all student data. Get all student data. In order to get it, we send get request and click send. But we need to specify address. Which address? Localhost 8080 API/students. So it is without ID. How do I know? It is in the code. In my index.js, relative address API students. So it is localhost 8080/API students. Another place where it is, when I run this service, I definitely configure it. In application properties, you see API, right? So before we, okay, we can do this here. Localhost 8080/students. Okay, and I sent get request, and I receive entire array of objects for student form objects. So here it is, array, and one student form object, second student form object. But besides it, I have descriptions in terms of links. This is called hypermedia. It is extra information how to get the data. So if we go to root of the API, in root of my API, it is just /API. It is, we will see that it tells us there is a table called students. So this is hypermedia. It's extra description. And so typically, if JSON is generated on the server side, not just file typed by me, it will contain a description of the data in terms of links. It may also contain HTML pages describing it. And that HTML pages describing it could be generated automatically. So it is part of web services specification. Besides data, it may contain hypermedia describing it. So if we go to the root, it tells us that we have a table students, we have also profile, and this is where we can get information. So I'm going to table of students, and this table also provides information where to get data about individual student. For example, this data about Lisa Simpson. So if I copy this and I paste it here, this is data specifically to Lisa Simpson. So this is how it works. And this is also a reference to the data on web. So besides pure data, it also contains description, hypermedia. I can do the same here. This is get all student data, right? Or I can create another request, and I call it get one student data, right? Localhost 3, this one, and I call it get one student data. Now send request, and this was specific data for Lisa Simpson from this address. So this one student/3. I click save, so I have it. And I click save, so I have it. So this is an exercise about getting data. At the next step, we will learn how to update data. So this example is by default in main branch, contains some master branch, contains some security configuration. And it is inside of config, security config. If we open config, security config, we will see what is happening here. Configure web ignoring, it means ignore any request, it means go through, let it through. If it is get request for anything, it means security will not interfere with any get request for anything. But everything else, security authorize request, any request deny all. Everything else besides this one is deny all by default. So this configuration will not allow any editing, adding data, or deleting. It will allow only getting data. In order to practice with other requests, let's disable this thing. So I created branch in the today lesson, in the morning lesson. I created branch in this code, and I call it this no security branch, this one. So let's check it out. So I will stop this from running, and I click on master, and I select no security, and I said checkout. This branch was created in the morning class. I created this branch by just deleting stuff. So it's not a very smart decision. I just deleted the entire security configuration. So what did I do there? In my POM file, I deleted all libraries related to security, and I also deleted that security config. Now it is open to any kind of requests, including delete requests, update requests, and anything like that. So if I click run, now this service will allow me to update data using Postman. So let's wait till it runs. It started. And I'm going to localhost 8080 again. And this is a table, original table. And let's click on something like Simpson, it works. Bart Simpson, it works. I will close these tools. Now, let's play with changing the data and see what happens. First, let's try to get one item again. So get one, I click save it request, get one student. And now it is for item 3, send, and I got Lisa Simpson for ID 3. Let's analyze what we have here on the screen. Status is 200 OK. So status is received, is sent to your app. So you can check status on receiving end. So this data is sent to your app, status data. If it is 200 OK, it means it's fine. So the status is important. If I put ID 30, obviously this data doesn't exist, right? So I click send to wrong ID. I'm trying to get data that doesn't exist. I click send, and status, this is 404 not found. So this is how to check status using Postman. And when you send request from your code, you will receive status as well. So status is important information. So this is about a status for getting request. If it has data, it will be 200, OK. If data for that ID doesn't exist, it would be status 404 not found. Next, let's try to delete some data. How delete works? You see, there are not just get requests, there are other requests, right? And including delete one. In order to delete data, we send delete request to specific address that contains data. It is that simple. For example, if I want to delete data associated with ID 2, this would be 2. Okay? And I will send delete request. So let's do that. I'm creating a new request in the students collection. And I create add request. And I set delete one student data. Delete one student data. Okay. We need address. And I'm deleting second item, okay, with ID, or whoever is there. Or I don't remember who is there, for a second in the row. List students. So I'm deleting Bart Simpson because ID is numbered from 1. And this is in the order ID. So I'm deleting Bart Simpson. So I'm sending request to ID 2. And this is delete request. Right? And watch for status. I click send. And status is no content. Status 204 no content, it means delete is successful. It deleted data and it returned something that was changed, and what was changed, it's no data now. If we update data, it will be sent new data. If we delete data, it doesn't send content. So this means you actually deleted it. Let me click save. And so I deleted item on this server with ID 2. If I reload this page, we will see that Bart Simpson will be gone. So let's reload this page. You see Bart Simpson is gone. Because I deleted this using JSON, using RESTful request to the repository. So that was about delete. What if I try to delete data that doesn't exist? It is an error, right? So if I deleted data that did exist, it is 204 no content. If I try to delete data 200, ID doesn't exist, 200, and I try to send request to delete it, response is 404 not found. So if it couldn't find things that I tried to delete, a response will be different, 404 not found. So this will be error of deleting if data is not found that you try to delete. This is about deleting. What about updating data? In order to update data, first we send request to the data that we want to update. For example, let's go to get all student data, and now I want to update the first one. It is my name, okay? I want to update it. How update works? You send a put request with new data to the address. So first I need to copy the data because I'm going to send it. This is not a data, this is hypermedia, so we're ignoring this. So I'm copying the data. So I will edit this part and send to the address of the data using put request. First, I copied the data that I want to change. Say copy. Next, I want to say create add request and say edit student data, right? Edit data. Edit one student data. In order to edit it, we send put request to the address that I want to change, address of the data that I want to change. So it is localhost 8080 API student ID 1. And next, I need to insert data into body of the request. So I click body here, and then I select row here, and I paste data, and I need to close curly brace. I still not sure what is going on. I think it's a little bit something strange. Just 1 second. Localhost 8080 API students body row. This is what I need. I also need to change this. Instead of text, I need to change JSON. You see? This is why it doesn't understand it nicely. So I sent put request localhost 8080 API students 1. Now I want to edit this part. So instead of Alex, I want to change it to Alexander. Instead of program year 1, I want to change it to 2. Instead of program co-op true, it will be false. And instead of internship, it will be true. Okay? So this is new data that I'm trying to send. And I'm going to info. Let's compare. I'm changing Alex to Alexander, and year from 1 is changing to 2. Program co-op is changing to false, so this will be no, and this will be yes. So if everything is fine, it says 200 OK. See 200 OK, and it sent me new data back. So this is new data sent back. If I reload this page, you will see that it changed Alex to Alexander. This will be 2, this will be no, this will be yes. You see? So in order to change data, we send put request with in the body JSON. Right? With JSON in the body. I don't know why it showed this. Maybe it is just extra. We can reformat it somehow, I believe, or just ignore it, this piece. It's probably fluke in the software. But the idea is that in order to change data, we send put request to the address of the data, and inside of the body of the request, we should send JSON of the new data. This will change it on the server side. And we learned how to delete, how to edit. Now we need to learn how to add data, right? So in order to add data, we send post request, but obviously without ID because new data doesn't have ID yet. So we send post request containing new data to the table address. It means without ID. So I want to copy this piece because I'm going to change it later, right? So I'm new add request. Let's call it add new student. Add new student. And when we add data, we send post request. Post request. So let's enter address of the table, because new data doesn't have ID. It's address of the table. And ID is similar. We select body. Here we select row. And instead of text, we select JSON. And we paste new data that we are going to send. This one. And let's add, I don't know why it's doing it. It's probably, it's just showing spaces explicitly. Probably it is just showing spaces explicitly. Yeah, or tabs. Yes, this is probably tabs or whatever. Body, row, JSON. What's the option for? No, it is row. There's no other option. And that is reasonable. So it is row, JSON. Let's add, change name to somebody fake name. I don't know. Bob Johnson, for example. Bob Johnson, probably year 1. Program co-op year, co-op true, and internship true also. Okay, so if it is successful, we will see Bob Johnson here, right? So I send using post request and a return status to one created. So if data is inserted successfully, return status to one created, right? And it will return new data that just added Bob Johnson, computer programmer, program year 1, and this is the address of new data. So ID is 6. So if we reload this page, we will see that Bob Johnson is here, right? Info and this here. So this is how to test backend using Postman by sending delete, update, and delete, get request, delete, put, and post requests. And this backend is quite elementary. It had just one table, right? How did I create this project? When I created this project, I selected File, New, Project, and obviously it was Spring Initializer because it was Spring project. Let's give it a name, for example, Service Demo, right? Service Demo. I selected Java, Maven, some group, and project SDK 11, Java 11, jar. So standard way, nothing special. And I click Next. And in Developer Tools, I didn't select anything. In Web, I selected Spring Web because it is still web project. It is sent in JSON. It's also HTML, so it is web project. Next. for repositories to send JSON, because I had repository there, a repository for student data, I had to select this one. So my repository is sending JSON now. And this is not selected, and you already saw hypermedia, but it is assumed if you select this one. But if you create JSON yourself in your code using libraries, and you want these headers to be included, this hypermedia part, this way you need to select it. So there are two ways of creating JSON. One, it is to create repository that is sending JSON, but it's not always possible, because if you generate JSON in your code and you don't have a database associated with it, you cannot really use this option with database, right? So another option is to write code that is sending it. And this way, if you want to include hypermedia, you select this library, hit yes. And what is this part? REST repositories whole explorer. If you select this option, it will create HTML pages associated with the repository, browserable HTML automatically. So besides creating repositories that send JSON, it will also create HTML pages describing the data. So this is also a useful thing if you look into real-life applications that provide some web interface. It will be also HTML description of the data itself. I didn't select this part. Also, if we create JSON using code, Kotlin Java code, we select this one, Spring Web Services. But I didn't select it because it's created automatically, not from my code. Templates, I didn't select templates because there's no templates in this program. And security was originally selected, and I removed it later. But what was selected? Spring security was selected. I removed it later because I wanted to show how to edit it. And that security configuration wouldn't show editing. Wouldn't let me to edit it. In SQL, since this code is using H2, I selected H2. And I selected Spring Data GPA because it's using Java Persistence API. So this is how I created this project. I selected Spring Web, REST repositories, H2, and Spring Data GPA. After this, I just typed code. I won't click Finish, but this is explanation how I generated this project. In this project, I had initialization, so it has schema SQL. It is a table what contains student data. And I also have data SQL. It is the data that will be inserted into this table automatically. This project is using H2 database, and H2 database is in memory. So when we restart this project, it will be brand new data. So this is how it was created, and this is what it is. In Java code, I have just student entity class, and I have just student repository, and nothing else. So all JSON part is generated by the libraries that I included. So it doesn't have much code. It's just only student entity and repository, student repository. Which is almost empty because it is inheriting all properties from GPA repository. Now let's have a break. It's 1 o'clock. And after the break, we will talk theoretically about RESTful services, and we will have example that has more tables in it. So let's relax, 10 or 15 minutes. 10 or 15? OK, please pick up. 15, OK. So let's relax for 15 minutes. After this, we will have about 15 minutes talk about theory, and we will have about half an hour discussion, bigger code, but it's probably half an hour. It's too long because it's although bigger, but it is kind of self-explanatory. So let's relax. We'll have time. No rush. Stop recording.